Russia's fuel crisis is deepening even without effective drones. In the Smolensk region, a freight train carrying gasoline derailed. This happened as a result of a simple traffic accident. The truck driver drove onto the railway crossing. Right in front of the train, the engineer braked urgently, but it was impossible to avoid a collision with the truck. According to preliminary data, the locomotive and 18 gasoline tank cars derailed. They caught fire so intensely that 3 fire trains were dispatched to extinguish the blaze. The Afipsky oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar region is on fire. The fire at the refinery broke out last night after drones struck the facility. The Russian authorities confirmed the drone raid on the strategic facility, but local residents claim that the fire allegedly broke out due to the fall of drone debris. According to the official version promoted by Russian propaganda, the fire covered 30 square meters at one of the installations. Nuclear safety is under threat. A Russian drone crashed near the South Ukraine nuclear power plant. This happened last night during another enemy attack on regions of Ukraine. The Russian drone was destroyed approximately 800 meters from the plant's perimeter fence. The debris damaged metal structures, shattered car windows, and also knocked out a regional power transmission line. The power line is not connected to the nuclear power plant, so there was no threat to the operation of the reactors. However, the IAEA has already called the incident dangerous for nuclear safety. And the agency's Director General, Rafael Grossi, expressed his concern about the situation. And interestingly, this happened right after his visit to Putin, which Grossi had posted about the day before on his page on the social network X, calling the meeting a timely and important exchange of views. He also thanked the Russian dictator for supporting, and I quote, the impartial and professional work of the IAEA. Donald Trump continues to verbally attack Russia. While hosting Turkish President Erdogan at the White House the day before, the U.S. president explained why he had previously called Russia in a post on Truth Social, literally a paper tiger. In Ukrainian, this is closest in meaning to the expression, a colossus with feet of clay. Trump explained that after 2 weeks of intense bombing of Ukraine, they have not captured any new territory. He also urged the Turkish leader to stop buying Russian oil products. His country is third after China and India in terms of imports from Russia. Erdogan did not respond immediately. Later, when speaking with journalists and asked whether the president of Turkey had listened to him, Trump clarified that he hadn't directly told Erdogan to stop buying from Putin. But he is confident that if he does so, he will get agreement because Turkey can receive energy resources by sea from other countries. But as for Hungary and Slovakia, which also buy Russian energy resources, the U.S. president believes they cannot stop because they do not have access to other suppliers. The American leader apparently received this information from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, with whom he spoke by phone. Trump once again repeated that the Russian economy is in very poor condition, literally heading for hell.
I am very dissatisfied with what Russia is doing and with what President Putin is doing. I really don't like it at all. He is killing people for no reason whatsoever. And things are going frankly badly for them considering they've put everything on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing everything indiscriminately. And they're capturing very little territory if they're capturing any at all. In fact, they've lost some territory, so I think this is it's bad for Russia's reputation. This war should have ended. If this were truly our war, we would have certainly ended it in a mere week, but they are now entering their 4th year of conflict. 4 years of fighting.
Poland has opened its borders with Belarus and is urging its citizens to leave the country immediately. This was stated in a declaration by the Polish embassy in Minsk, published the night before. Based on an order from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the embassy noted that as of September 25th, border crossings between Poland and Belarus have been reopened. However, due to rising tensions, military events in the region, and cases of arbitrary detention of Polish citizens, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does not recommend any travel to Belarus. And it urges Polish citizens who are currently in Belarus to leave its territory immediately using available commercial or private means. Let me remind you that since September 12th, all border crossings between Poland and Belarus have been closed due to the Russian-Belarusian military exercises Zapad 2025.
Krasnodar region came under drone attack. At least 6 explosions were heard in Kuban. Online sources report a possible strike on a plant producing phosphorus and mineral fertilizers as well as nitrogen compounds. The fire was large-scale and loud, but not entirely. Russians describe all this in their videos using unprintable language, just as they did with the explosions that happened earlier in the Krasnodar region as well. Maritime drones attacked the port of Tuapse. The occupiers' air defense was actively engaged, according to local social media channels, targeting the surface drones. One of them was reportedly destroyed, but the other, as seen in the video, crashed into the loading pier of the plant, sending Russians into a panic. Watch how it happened now without commentary. The occupation administration in Crimea explained the total fuel shortage on the peninsula. They say that fuel disruptions occurred due to a sudden decrease in production volumes at Russian oil refineries. However, they plan to resolve the shortage in the coming weeks and are asking motorists to be patient. But gas stations are shutting down. In just a few days, about 360 gas stations have closed due to a lack of fuel. Even Russian propaganda media admit this. The most severe shortage is being felt in southern Russia. The number of gas stations has decreased by 14%, and in the temporarily occupied Crimea and Sevastopol by almost half. Supply disruptions have also affected the Moscow, Leningrad, Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod regions, and several others. The fuel crisis and sales restrictions began 3 weeks ago, the reason being, in the Russian Federation, they cite attacks by Ukrainian drones which have been successfully striking oil refineries and storage facilities. The enemy has advanced deeper into the Serebryansky forest in Donetsk region and near the village of Berezove in Zaporizhzhia. These are the latest updates from the Deep State portal. Their analysts note that the Russians are using their numerical advantage and are looking for so-called gaps in our troops' defenses in order to infiltrate deeper into the territory. There, they hide, try to entrench themselves, and increase their presence to control the area. This is exactly how they are acting in Kupiansk as well. As the commanders whose units are repelling enemy attacks in the city say, enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups are constantly crossing the Oskil River. And while previously the Russians would disguise themselves in civilian clothes, now they often use even the pixelated camouflage of the armed forces of Ukraine. So the defense forces have to carry out counter-sabotage operations and clear almost every building. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces, since this morning, Ukrainian defense forces have already repelled 80 enemy attacks on various sections of the front. The fiercest fighting is taking place in the Pokrovsk, Lyman, and Novopavlivka sectors. Volodymyr Zelensky admitted that he might not run for president if the war ends. He stated this in an interview with Axios. When asked by the host whether he plans to lead the country in peacetime, he replied that he is ready to step down if the fighting stops, and that he told Donald Trump the same thing. The president of Ukraine revealed a few details about his conversation with the head of the United States. In particular, he said that if Russia continues to attack Ukraine's energy sector, Trump supports retaliatory strikes, as well as strikes on Russian drone manufacturing enterprises and missile facilities. Zelensky also asked Trump to provide Ukraine with a weapon system, the name of which he did not disclose, but which would force Vladimir Putin to come to the negotiating table. Kremlin officials need to know where their bomb shelters are if they do not stop the war. This is what Volodymyr Zelensky stated in an interview with the magazine. 2 enemy Antonov 26 aircraft and coastal radar stations. The Ghosts Special Unit reports another trophy in Crimea. During a raid on the peninsula, special forces of Ukrainian military intelligence burned 2 Russian invaders' Antonov 26 transport aircraft and also struck an enemy surface situation radar station and a coastal one. MISM-1 radar station. And from the Zaporizhzhia direction, there are reports of a Russian Su-34 aircraft being shot down at night, which had been carrying out terrorist attacks in the region, including bombing civilians with glide bombs. The president of the European Commission believes that the downing of Russian aircraft in the airspace of NATO countries is likely. Ursula von der Leyen was asked in a CNN interview what she thinks about Trump's statements supporting the downing of Russian aircraft. In the alliance countries, the official noted that although she does not represent NATO, she does have her own position on this issue. Von der Leyen stated, and I quote, that they must defend every square centimeter of their territory. And this means that if there is an incursion into their airspace, then after a very clear warning, the option of shooting down such a fighter jet is on the table. End of quote. Bloomberg reports that the allies in the North Atlantic Alliance are trying to coordinate their positions after Russia's recent violations of their airspace. But they still cannot reach a unanimous position. For example, the US Secretary of State emphasized that Russian aircraft over Alliance airspace would only be shot down if they attack. At the same time, Poland and the Baltic countries are demanding a more decisive stance. Professionals are behind the drones that violated Danish airspace. But so far, no evidence of Russia's involvement has been found. This was stated by the country's defense minister, Truls Lund Poulsen. According to law enforcement officials, the devices were launched not far from airfields, but the armed forces did not dare to shoot them down due to risks to people. The Danish government has also decided for now not to convene consultations within NATO over last night's incident. Drones were spotted at least 4 airports in the Scandinavian country. At Aalborg Airport, operations even had to be suspended. Local authorities reported that this incident also affected the Danish armed forces. This is because this particular airport is used as a military base. Earlier this week, unidentified drones had already entered Danish airspace. At that time, the airport in the capital, Copenhagen, had to be closed. The country's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, called it the most serious attack on the country's infrastructure and did not rule out that Russia could be involved. NATO allies in Europe remain on high alert, as similar incidents have occurred not only in Denmark but also in other countries.
There should be no doubt that we are dealing with a professional actor given the systematic nature of the operations in many locations almost simultaneously. I have identified this as a hybrid attack using various types of drones. Danish intelligence is closely monitoring the situation and constantly assessing whether the military threat is changing. However, it is also clear that we will see more hybrid incidents. We have no evidence to directly link this to Russia.